Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to the Cancer Conquering Community. And we are so honored today to have a very special guest, oncologist Dr. Tiffany Troso Sandoval, and she's going to share with us. She is really super busy. I've had problems connecting and making sure, but we are so honored to have her here. So, Dr. Tiffany, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are. And, we're all excited for a great conversation because, this is the cancer conquering community and we're interested in conquering cancer. Dr. Tiffany, please unmute yourself.
There we go. All right. So I'm speaking through my cell phone. So it might look a little, actually, let me switch over here. Can you all hear me okay?
There's an echo.
Okay. I'm having technical difficulties. I have two different pairs of
We're good.
earpods and neither will connect with my computer. So I apologize. Hopefully
No,
you can
no,
hear
you're
me
good.
clearly
You're
enough
good.
just through the computer speaker. Is it all right?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, perfect. So, hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Tiffany Troso Sandoval. I go professionally by Dr. Troso because my husband is Dr. Sandoval and my father paid for medical school, so he gets the title. So, Dr. Troso was at Memorial Sloan Kettering for over 25 years. I subspecialized in breast and gynecological cancer. I'm a medical oncologist, so I'm sure most of you know that that's the person who does the chemotherapy, the hormone therapy, the uh, targeted therapy, immunotherapy. And oftentimes the medical oncologist is the sort of point guard, so to speak, of the cancer community for your care. Usually the surgeon, will do their surgery, will become, still remain part of the care for a while, but it's usually your medical oncologist that sort of runs the show after the initial workup and treatment and surgery. So, a little bit of background. I grew up on Long Island. I still live here, not far from where I grew up. I went to Princeton University and majored in molecular biology, which I absolutely loved. Key funny fact is that a lot of the stuff that was cutting edge that we were learning about at Princeton University is now in like middle school science textbooks. I'm like, that's how fast science moves. And so, the things that I was, learning about like at the benchtop and in these big classes are now in my kids' high school textbooks. So from there, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I took a year off. I did some research in the city at Cornell University Medical College and continuing some more benchtop research, got a couple of publications, and then decided to go to medical school. So I applied and actually stayed at Cornell Medical School, which is in Manhattan on York Avenue, and then did my residency there at New York Hospital. Then I went all the way across the street to Sloan Kettering for my 2 years of fellowship, and then off into the world as an oncologist. So part of my story comes not just from the love of science and molecular biology that brought me to oncology, because molecular biology, the study of DNA and the genes, actually leads itself completely into the practice of oncology, especially these days as we're becoming more and more targeted with our therapies. But my grandmother had cancer when I was a little girl, my mom's mom, and some of my strongest memories of that were sitting in the back of my mom's white 1970 Pontiac with the red pleather seats on them, burning the backs of my legs while my mom would run my grandmother into the hospital to get her radiation therapy or her treatments. And my mom would always come back to the car while we were waiting for my grandmother. Yes, they left me alone in the car, but that was the 70s and that was still cool then. My mom was always devastated when she got back. She would often cry. She'd hit the steering wheel. She was so upset because nobody would talk to her and nobody would tell her what's going on, what's grandma's prognosis. Is the treatment working? Half the time she couldn't find a doctor, and nobody would call her back or what have you. And so she was always really upset and frustrated. And I remember my grandma unfortunately dying in my home and was in a lot of pain and I think, was not properly cared for. And so fast forward medical school, residency, fellowship, go into oncology, giving you a little background about the kind of doctor that I would like to be. I always say I never want to be the doctor that would have made my mother cry. And so I have spent 25 years at Sloan Kettering working in clinical corporate oncology, so to speak, in a place where, RVUs and how long you spend with the patient and how much you're billing for and, how quickly you're getting them in and out of the chemotherapy suite is more important, I felt, after a long time than it was, how satisfied the patient was, how much they understood their diagnosis, how confident they felt, how comfortable they felt in their plan. And after many years, I had my own medical issue. I actually went out on leave for about 6 months and had a sort of come to Jesus moment where I couldn't go back. And even though it's one of the premier cancer institutions of the world, and I can promise you, you will get excellent medical care there, it's just really hard to work there. And I decided to start something on my own. And so I have two companies I started. One is called Winning the Cancer Journey, which is my platform for education. I'm creating an online course that will help educate people basically in an oncology 101. What's a PET scan? What's an MRI? What's a receptor? Et cetera, et cetera. And so anybody that's interested in hearing about that more, feel free to reach out to me. I've also, where I was for the past week, I was in a very intense conference where I was writing my second book. So my first book is called Winning the Cancer Journey. The second book is called The Empowered Patient. And that is the book in which I am basically teaching you or teaching the readers how to navigate the system and how to go through the mindfulness of becoming an empowered patient. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today as well. And then my second company is called Second Look Oncology, in which I give one-on-one consultations. I can give second opinions virtually. I review all of your records. I go over them. I give you recommendations, what have you. So I wanted to pause here and let everybody unmute themselves. And I wanted to see before I started, are there any specific questions or things that you would like me to cover today? Because I'd be happy to work that in.
Dr. Tiffany, could you
Hi,
put
George.
your contact information
Can't
in the
hear you though.
chat?
Hmm.
And also, if you have a chance, put your books there, um, so people could reach out. And I would also suggest putting it on our Facebook page too.
Okay, they're not published yet, so I'll post an early interest list so that you'll be informed when they go out. I'm working with, this is an interesting little whole new world, right? So you don't learn anything about business in medical school. Building a website, building a funnel. What the heck is that? And yeah, publishing a book is another huge endeavor. So I'm
Hmm.
trying to time them properly so that they'll be properly received by the media. Unfortunately, that apparently is important in terms of getting it out there so people can actually find it and see it. Um, so any other questions? George, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, if you can touch a little more on the empowering the patient. What I see with my clients is that they just they really play their patient role to a point that they are frozen.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the doctor says, that's what it is. And I like to see. I teach them to say, look, don't play that role. You have to be proactive in all this stuff. Take action.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you're being treated, but there's so much more that you can do. Don't
Yeah.
just wait for results. Take action. Yeah.
I have a whole lecture on that I'm going to give in rapid fire. Any other questions, guys? Thank
Yes,
you, George.
Kimber would like
Yes,
to ask.
yes. In terms of second opinions, I was actually considering, my dad lives in a small town. They have a cancer center, but it's a very small town.
Hmm.
And I don't know if he's really getting the optimal treatment for him.
Hmm.
But the biggest caveat is that he's 80 years old. He's healthy, strong in all ways except for the cancer. So that was my question was at what point or because I was thinking of going to, where do you have to go to Stanford or whatever for a second opinion, but just to be able to get another set of eyes and maybe have someone else,
Sure.
look at his case. So that would be interesting for me to be able to speak with you or talk about this
Sure, I
at
can
80
drop a
because of
link.
the perception of how they treat you when you're 80, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of cancer does your dad have?
Stage 4 prostate, and it has metastasized
Oh,
into
yes.
his bones.
Yes, I heard that. I also have to tell the group because this is what we do here, but my husband was just diagnosed with prostate cancer about 6 weeks ago. So I can add that on my list of busy things to take care of. It's quite a challenge as an oncologist to try and navigate the care of your own loved one. So unfortunately, I'm there. We don't, he just had surgery about 4 weeks ago. And it looks like they got it out, but it was 4A, which means that it went up to the capsule, but not through the capsule, the prostate, and then it was in one of the lymph nodes. And so we're anxiously awaiting to see what his PSA is in on July 11th to see if it's still elevated, then he has to go undergo more therapy. And if it's not, they want to just watch and wait, which doesn't sit well with me. But at any rate, I may be looking for another opinion on that myself. Um, I Anyway, we can talk. I will drop my email here so you have it. And you can email me.
And believe me, Dr. Tiffany is, I mean, you've heard a little bit about how busy she is, and now I completely understand. I mean, and so we are just so grateful and honored that you're here with us today. Thank you.
Honor is mine. I'm gonna send you a request, Mark, to share my screen because I just want to show you my content model. Okay. I'm gonna share here. Here. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Let me just move this out of the way. Over here. Okay. So this is my content. Now I have two screens and I don't want to be talking right at you, away from you. So let me see if I can move this over here. Okay. Can you still see me okay? All right, good. So this is my content model to create the empowered patient. And essentially, this is an online course, and it's also the basis of my second book that I'm in the process of writing. And so I'm going to give you an inside peek at it that nobody has ever seen before, except for my mentor at the conference that we were just at. So first, I would like to just start with asking everyone some questions. And you can just keep track of these yourself. If you have a piece of paper, just write down either a red for no, definitely not, a yellow for maybe, and a green for you have this covered. It's not an issue. Okay. So just close this. All right. So the first question, mindset. Have you been encouraged to take time for yourself and build a mindset that supports you being calm, having clarity in your diagnosis and confidence as you face your diagnosis? Have you been encouraged to take time for yourself to build a mindset where you come first? Red for no, yellow for maybe, green for I got this covered. Second, organize. Can you manage your medical information? Has anyone presented to you with a system to organize your medical records, test results, medications, and symptom tracking so it feels more manageable to you? Green is yes, red is no. Third question. And you can see I'm walking along the outside of this construct, okay? Third question. What's that? We good? Okay. So the third question is learning. Do you understand your treatment plan? Do you feel like your treatment plan has been clearly explained to you, along with what to expect before, during, and after each step of your treatment plan? Navigate. Have you been given tools or guidance to help manage the potential side effects and understand how to monitor and share symptoms with your care team? How do you monitor your side effects, and how do you share them with your care team? 6 is adaptation. What are your coping skills? Do you feel emotionally supported and equipped to stay engaged in your care, even on tough days? Which I think is getting a little bit towards what George was talking about before. 7, connection. Do you have a clear understanding of who's on your medical team and who to go to when you have a question or a concern? Strengthen. Have you found people, whether they're friends, family, or community members, who can offer meaningful support when you need it most? And do you know how to organize those people so they are most helpful for you? That's like an A and a B of 8. And then 9 is, have you been given support to make decisions that align with your own values, care goals, and life beyond cancer? Any questions about the questions? No? Okay. So now we're going to go through this a little bit more in detail. So just by a show of hands, how many, or you could put it in the chat, how many reds, how many greens, how many yellows? All green. You don't need my course mark. You're good. 6 reds and 3 greens. Yeah. All green. Good, Steve. I hope I had something to do with some of that. Only 2 green between my sister and my dad. Oh. Okay. Anybody else? All right, so we have a little bit of variety in responses. Aw, thank you, Steve. Okay, so let me just close this down. All right, so let's go through this. So my goal for a patient to be empowered is to help them to develop clarity in their diagnosis, as well as their treatment options, confidence in their ability to utilize the information and participate in their care, as well as a sense of calm and community. I'm actually going to change C. I've decided it's going to be community instead. So let's go through this a little bit. So the first step is to prepare. And what does that mean? Prepare means to basically get an understanding of what your diagnosis is, what your treatment options are, and really to get an understanding of where you are at this point in time in your cancer journey. I basically help patients learn a mindset where you need to learn to put yourself first. Put you first. That's my tagline. Put you first. Because at the end of the day, if you don't put you first and take care of yourself, you can't help take care of anybody else. You can't participate in the rest of your life. You can't take what you need from the medical system, and you can't give back to everyone else. The second idea here is organize. I like to teach patients how to organize their medical records. It's very simple. And I'd be happy to come back at some point if somebody was interested. And I have a webinar I give on this as well. It's really simple in terms of I'm an old school. I like paper. I have my patients get a binder, get clear page protectors, dividers, and I give you the names of all of the divisions. And basically, I help you to organize your medical records in a meaningful way so you have what you need at your fingertips. There is, of course, the electronic medical record, which I can tell you as an insider fails us a lot because sometimes things aren't organized, or sometimes if a patient goes to the hospital, for example, and has a hospital visit, and we request the records from the hospital, they will then press print on the whole report, and you will get 5,000 pages that are not tabbed and you can't find what you're looking for. So if you have the copy of your CT scan that you had in the hospital or at another hospital or what have you, and you could produce it for your doctor, you're in much better shape. And it's always better to have your own records at hand. The EMRs are great, but there are some problems in terms of using them. I can tell you umpteen number of times that I've gotten a hospital chart, then they scan it into the EMR and you've got to flip through hundreds of pages to figure out what you need. So you can imagine that it's better for you to have your own records. It also gives you empowerment. And I'll tell you a little story. The story is that I sorry, my dogs are barking. I had a patient, for example, and she was not of American descent. I think they were originally from India, and she didn't speak English very well. Her husband did, and her daughter spoke fluently. So they came to me for a second opinion, and she wasn't feeling well, and she had had a recurrence of her uterine cancer, and I was going through their records. And again, one of those situations where Sloan Kettering will give you, the pathology report and maybe one other sheet of paper, and then I may or may not have anything else that I need. And so I would ask the husband, who came in with this like shopping bag of like all these papers. I'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry, do you have the most recent CAT scan?" And he would dig into the bag, and papers are flying, and the daughter's holding the papers, and the wife is rolling her eyes, and everybody gets upset. The husband's upset, and he's embarrassed. "I'm so sorry, doctor. I don't mean to be wasting your time." It's okay. It's okay. Give me the bag. So I look through the bag because I know what I'm looking for, right? And I can piece through it. I finally find the report I need. Get through the rest of the consult. We had to do this a couple of times to find, the genetics report or whatever I needed. And the wife needed to go into the back chemo room, and I gave her an infusion of just some saline because she was dehydrated. In the interim, I told the husband to please go over to Staples, buy me a 2-inch binder and the other paraphernalia I told you about. He comes back. They, leaves it at the front desk. They bring it back to me. My nurse and I go back to my back office, the super secret office that the doctors hide in. And we sort all of these papers and we put them in chronological and, topic related order, hole punch them, put them all in the binder. And I go back to the chemotherapy room and I present the patient and her husband this binder. You couldn't believe the look on their face. I mean, the man started to cry. And they told me that nobody had ever spent any time helping them prepare or organize or understand. And this gave them so much more confidence, A, that I cared, obviously, but B, that now they understand and they have all of their records and they have pride in that. And it helped calm them. And anyway, he brought this binder with him every time he came into the hospital, every time he came into the office, and he would organize it himself. He'd put new reports in it. Now, you don't have to put every CBC that you get, obviously. You don't need every single lab test that you get in there, but in terms of doctor's notes or scan reports, pathology reports, genetics reports, even a list of your medications, it's your power tool to organize and prepare and to have that at your disposal. The second thing I'm going to just briefly mention in my organization is I like to tell my patients when they're on treatment to get a journal. But it's actually, let me see if I have a copy of one of them. It's actually a planner. So I like a monthly/weekly planner where you can actually turn to the month page and you'll see the whole month on a grid. And I like you to mark down there all important family things, all things that you need to make to. So grandma, your granddaughter has a belly, whatever. Your son is graduating from high school, whatever that is, you put that in the grid. And any other treatments or testing that you need to have done for your cancer need to go on that grid as well. But by using that grid in this clear pattern and you share it with your doctor or you share it with the person doing the scheduling, they can see right there what's important and what's not, and what days you're free and what you're not. Now, again, I don't like patients to put testing off for too long, and we're going to get into that in a minute, but it's a good way to keep everything as a visual. And then the weekly pages have nice big boxes usually that are, for each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? And in there, I have my patients mark down chemo day 1, meaning the day that they got their chemo. And then every day afterwards, I want you to track your symptoms. I want you to tell me, were you nauseous? Did you take the Zofran? Did it help? Did it not help? Were you nauseous the next day? Did you move your bowels? Did you have diarrhea? How many glasses of water did you drink? I want a tally of how many ounces of water you drank, and so on and so forth. And you can also put mindset things in there, how you're feeling, anxiety wise, what have you. And now you have a beautiful record of your symptom and your journey in between your treatments and seeing your doctor that you then bring to your doctor, and they can specifically help you with those symptoms, ailments, mindset, what have you. It's very difficult when a patient comes into the office and says, "Oh yeah, I was nauseous. I was so nauseous after chemo." Well, okay, did you call? No. Did you take the Zofran? Yeah, I think I took it once. I'm not sure if it worked or not. Well, how many days after the chemo were you nauseous? Was it the next day? Was it a week later? I'm not, maybe 5 days later. I'm not sure. That's hard to help. That's hard to treat. Does that make sense? The more specific information you give the doctors, the better they can help you. Because if you're nauseous the day after chemotherapy, for example, I treat that differently than if you have nausea a week later. You understand? So, moving on. This last thing is in this grouping is understanding. So, I like to go over in my course, for example, some of the basic information that people need to understand where they're going and what they're doing. So I brought up earlier before about the whole what's the difference between a PET scan and a CAT scan, right? And I know one of my patients is on the line here that had that particular question. So what is a PET scan? A PET scan is something where they give you an injection of a radioactive sugar, and that localizes to parts in your body that are inflamed or dividing rapidly and growing, right? So a PET scan shows uptake or activity. A CAT scan is more of a geographical map. And you can see the different organs, their shape, their size, and that's where they would actually measure, oh, there's a nodule or a spot in the liver that's 1.2 centimeters, etc. And then they track that by size, whereas a PET scan, they track it by activity. And so the analogy I like to use is when you watch, if anybody ever watches the news anymore, where the anchorman, the weatherman comes on and he shows you the map of the United States. And I'm from New York, so I talk about New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Long Island. You can see the geography of the map, and you can see some of the topography where there are mountains or what have you, right? So that's a CAT scan. Now, when the news person talks about a heat wave, there's a heat wave coming through, and they put a red stripe across where it's going to be over 90 degrees, and they put a yellow stripe over where it's going to be 80 degrees, etc. That's a thermographic map. That's a PET scan. So you can see that you need a CAT scan with the geography overlaid with a PET scan imaging of the activity to help see where the spot is, how big it is, and how bright it is if it's active. So the other thing that's important to know is that PET scans are not accurate if you have an infection or if you just had surgery, because those are times where there's other activity that will take up that sugar and will give a false positive. So one example I had when a patient used to come, I had a patient come in for a second opinion, and she and her husband were outraged that their doctor, she had ovarian cancer, she had just had a big surgery, they removed all of her tumors, and now she needed to have chemotherapy. But they were outraged that the doctor would not order for them a PET scan. And and that's why they wanted to transfer care, because the doctor wasn't listening to them. Well, that's a missed opportunity for education on that doctor's point, unfortunately. He was right in not ordering the PET scan, but they didn't understand why. So now they're looking for another opinion. So in that circumstance, the best imaging of a pelvis is actually an MRI. If I have to do the whole body, I do the CAT scan, because a PET scan, again, can't be done 3 weeks after surgery because you're healing and everything has been adjusted and inflamed. So no PET scan. They ended up staying with me more, I think, because I explained it to them, but they still didn't get their PET scan. All right, next, we're going to move into, is this too long, Mark? Can I keep going? I could
Yeah, you
break this
can
up
keep
into,
going. Do you still need the screen up?
well, I'm using this
Oh,
still,
okay.
but we don't
Okay.
have to. I could take it down. Okay, let me just stop sharing. Okay, let me bring this up. Bring this over here. Okay. So do I come up as the speaker? I think it's still spotlighted on you, Mark.
No, you're
Oh,
good.
really? I
Yeah.
see you. on the single screen. Okay,
No, no, we have the whole group up.
got it. There's a screen. I have a second screen. Okay, it doesn't matter. All right, so let's see. Next, do you know how to spotlight, Mark? Because it will be helpful for me for
No,
my
I
video.
don't.
Okay, let me see how you do it.
Does anybody know?
What was the question?
How to spotlight me.
Oh, no, I have no idea.
There we go. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So next thing that I want to talk about is the participation component, okay? And so in this component, I basically like to teach patients how to, I need to bring this back up again. 1 second. Okay. In this component, I like to teach patients on how to learn, navigate, and adapt. So in this circumstance, you need to learn how to basically navigate your system and learn who to speak to for what. You need to understand your treatment plan. And so in this component, I also teach about, major parts of your treatment plan and how to understand them. I review how to read your pathology report. And I also talk about who to speak to about various different things. Okay. So then in the next component here in Navigate, this is important because you need to know who your care team is. So your care team is often made up of your doctor, your medical oncologist, your surgical oncologist, your radiation oncologist, your nurse practitioner, a PA, the nurse. You've got the secretary to the doctor. You've got the clinic manager. You've got the social worker. You have a nutritionist. And I like to remind you of all of the additional services that are available to you or should be made available to you. There's a genetic counselor you may need to see. There's an occupational therapist, for example, if you're having difficulty with fine motor skills, physical therapy, if you're weak or having difficulty walking, you understand that. And then holistic things. So such as, do they have an integrative medicine program? Can I get acupuncture to prevent numbness and tingling, peripheral neuropathy? Can I have an herbal consult with a doctor who can recommend certain herbs that can work in conjunction with my treatment and not necessarily interfere? Again, very important. I'm just putting this in as a side. You need to make sure that you tell your doctor everything you're taking, because even if it's an herb and you've bought it yourself, or you don't really want your doctor to know that you've been getting vitamin C infusions in Mexico, they need to know these things because it can interfere or interact or cause side effects that the doctor won't be able to understand or figure out how to help you, right? So you have to always come clean to your doctor. And if the doctor doesn't take the information well and can't explain to you in a satisfactory reason why you shouldn't be doing that or can't do it, then you should find another doctor, because they need to learn how to collaborate. So another very important thing here is medication tracking. I like my patients to make sure that they write down all of their meds that they're taking, the schedule at which they're supposed to take them, and if it makes it easier for you, or if you have a patient that has a little bit of a memory issue, make the pill boxes. And they sell all kinds of pill boxes on Amazon that come in all shapes and sizes. I often have my patients put their as needed medicines in one pill box, and then their must take daily medicines in another pill box. You can have an evening, an afternoon, a morning, what have you. It just, you sit down once a month and you get one of those big monthly ones. I can actually send you a link to the ones that I recommend. And just fill them up once a month and just makes life easier for everybody. Let's see. What else do I want to talk about here? So adaptation. I want you to also learn how to adapt your mindset and your lifestyle to your cancer and your cancer journey. And what does that mean? Does that mean I don't want you to do things? Does that mean I don't want you to work? Of course not. I want you to do everything that you feel up to doing and then a little more. Because I think the more active patients stay during their treatment, the better off they are, both psychologically and physically. So one thing I like to do is have my patients sit down and write 5 of their most important responsibilities in the next week and 5 of their priorities. And those aren't the same thing, right? So my priority is health, happiness, and safety of my family. That's a priority. Spending time with my children, quality time, that's a priority. That's not a responsibility. My responsibilities, well, I had to give this talk today. That was a responsibility that I had promised to do that was important. I have to continue working on my book because I want to meet the publication date that I have in the back of my mind. I have other responsibilities can be, so I have to pick up my granddaughter, not mine, but I have to pick up my daughter at ballet every Wednesday at 3:30. And all of and it could be more than 5, but I just don't want you to go too crazy. But you understand where you're putting priorities and responsibilities. And then, especially if you're not feeling well, those responsibilities, you have to look at the ones, which are the ones that only I can do, and which are the ones that somebody could help me with. Because one problem I see with a lot of cancer patients and their caregivers don't know how to help them because the patient is not helping them help themselves. So I always ask them to look at their responsibilities and try and make a decision. What are things that could potentially be delegated? And we're going to get into that a little bit more. So in this last component, in partnering, we're going to learn how to connect, build, and own our surroundings. And so basically, we are going to learn how to connect with the different types of doctors in our care. As we made that list before, you should have a list of all the different caregivers in your medical team and all the ones that you have good contact with and the ones that you think you should have that you don't already. And I have, outlines of how to put that together. So, and how to contact them if you need them, right? And so then the next list is I want everybody to write down 10, at least 10. Hopefully everybody has 10 people that they can count on to help them at some description, right? So maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your sister, maybe it's one of your older sons, maybe it's your next door neighbor, clergyman, onward and upward. So I want you to make a list of all of these people. And then what I do with my patients is I will then create a list of things that need help with. So, for example, 3 things in a doctor's office that you need to assign somebody to help you with, right? One would be somebody to come to the appointments with you with the doctor, to take notes and help remind you of questions that you wanted to ask, because oftentimes you get into the office and you're overwhelmed and you're just trying to take in so much information, and then emotion takes over and you're upset about a CAT scan report and you forget to ask the question that you need to ask. Always bring somebody with you. And that person should be organized, calm, and a good note taker, right? Organized and calm are very important, because if you bring Aunt Tilly and she's a lunatic and she's screaming at the doctor, but I thought you said blah, 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 that doesn't help you, doesn't help the doctor, doesn't help anybody. So this is what I'm bringing this up. You want to have a list of people and you want to know what thing you are bringing that person to. So then the next person that you might need is somebody that's going to come to the chemotherapy treatment room with you. Who's going to sit with you in chemo? Now, do you want that Aunt Tilly who can't shut up? You love her dearly, but she wants to yap at you the whole time, and you've just got some Benadryl, and all you really want to do is go to sleep, right? And she wants to put on the TV. So you got to think about the temperament of the person that you're bringing with you to the chemotherapy room, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So, and then a third person would be, maybe just somebody that's going to drive you to and from appointments or bring you to the CAT scan appointment. That doesn't have to be the same person that sits with you. So now we have 3 different people potentially that you're bringing into the doctor's office for various different things, right? And then from there, what you do is you take along your responsibilities. And what I do is I want you to sit down and look at your week or month. I have a report due on Friday. Okay, that's an only me thing. I have to pick up my granddaughter on Wednesday from ballet. Somebody else can do that for me, right? I know that the night I get home from chemotherapy, I usually don't feel so great, and I definitely don't want to make dinner. So that would be a great night for Marjorie, your friend next door, to bring over a lasagna for you. And so what you see is that you are empowering yourself and empowering the people that love you and want to help you, but you're getting the care that you actually need. And you're arranging it and organizing it so that you have control. because you don't need 14 lasagnas and you don't need 7 Afghan blankets to wear in chemotherapy, but people are going to just do things for you because they don't know what else to do and they want to help and they want to support you. So let other people help you and help guide and direct them. They'll be grateful. Much, much easier for me to call somebody and say, hey, you know, that guy that calls and said, hey, you know, if you need anything, just let me know. That's useless. It's basically useless, right? Because nobody's going to ask for something. But if you're organized and you say, you know, John, I could really use a ride to the CAT scan on Saturday because, you know, I don't like to drive myself. Sometimes I don't feel well and I'd love the company. Would you be able to do that? And there you go. They are thrilled to help you. If they can't do that one, then you give them something else. But you understand. Okay, moving on. So build is, I kind of rolled right through that in terms of the build. And then owning. What do you do to own it? What I mean own, again, I am saying you are taking charge of your journey. You are the empowered patient. You are not the guy who's just going to sit and be passively running through your cancer care and just doing everything that you're told. Now, I'm not saying that you should be challenging and fighting with your doctor at every turn because that'll make you upset and probably won't help your care, but you need to become your own best advocate. And, you know, going back, for example, to something I said in the beginning about the organization, right? So you bring in this journal that you have, the planner, and you say, you know, instead of the doctor says, did you have nausea? And you can say now, because you're educated and you're empowered, you know, I noticed that in the last 3 cycles, I tend to get really constipated and can't move my bowels 2 days after chemo. And then I end up taking something really powerful and then I have diarrhea for 2 days. And so you noticed that symptom because even if the doctor didn't ask you about it, you've written it down and you know it. And now you tell them about it. And now they can help you. And you might not have otherwise brought that out, right? And so again, you're becoming your own best advocate. If you don't understand why you're getting a CAT scan instead of an MRI or instead of a PET scan, you ask. And they have to explain it to you. And they have to explain it to you until you understand. That's part of our job. A lot of doctors are not taught that in medical school. In fact, most of us aren't. We don't get any communication skills almost whatsoever. We're taught about diseases and medicines and how to treat problems once they arise. We don't learn much about prevention. We don't learn much about communication, and we don't learn much about nutrition, for example. So, just trying to see. So I also like to talk about how to manage stress and to maintain resilience. And these become life skills that expand past your cancer journey. And so what do I mean by resilience? And what do I mean by less managing stress? So I'm going to boil it down to one simple thing that's going to sound a little trite, but think about it. Let the little things go. There are always bigger things to worry about. And what do I mean by that? So I have a patient that comes in and she screams at everybody from the guy who parked her car to the woman who checks her in to the appointment to the chemotherapy nurse because she was waiting too long. And then they changed her chemo suite appointment. And now she's waiting longer and she's screaming at the manager and blah, 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 blah. Am I saying that that isn't disappointing and frustrating? All of those things stink. Or, for example, you come in for your treatment and your blood counts aren't good and you get sent home. And now you're disappointed because you're all revved up to take your treatment. And now you can't get your treatment. And you just bottom out emotionally about that. So what I mean by resilience and managing your stress is to let the little things go. If the appointment gets changed, okay, that sucks, moving past it. And the reason I say this is because I've found over the years that so many patients will waste so much of their emotional energy and give away their power by overreacting to some things that just aren't really necessarily in their control and are probably not that important in the bigger scheme of things. So if they change your appointment every week, okay, I got it. Go talk to somebody about it. That's fine. But realize then if you ever catch yourself sort of blowing up, that what are you really upset about? You're probably mostly upset because you don't have control. You lost control. And that's part of the problem with having any kind of disease where you're in a medical system that takes away your control and your power. So my purpose here was to help explain some of these ideas to all of you so that you can become your own empowered patient. And although these things in and of themselves don't specifically treat your cancer, they help manage you so that you get through your treatment, your journey in a better frame of mind, in a much healthier way, so that you have more energy to take care of yourself and make sure that you're healing. And that's my talk.
We're going to open it up for questions, so uh, feel free to just wave your hand or use the Zoom hand waving to ask Dr. Tiffany. Anybody have any questions?
Comments? Something.
I have. Go ahead, Lihia.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, Dr. Tiffany. For example, I was thinking through all your talk about how do you handle this when it comes to children. I mean, when there's a young person, or when the children are. I mean, they are having cancer. So how do you handle this with the family?
Let me just clarify your question. Are you talking about the child has cancer?
Yeah.
Oh, I actually don't treat patients, children at all.
Oh, oh,
No, I only treat adults. That's a whole, pediatric oncology is a whole other field. I'm sorry.
oh.
I mean, I could
I
tell
see,
you,
I see.
yeah. I mean, I could tell you off the top of my head what I've observed is that what in
Mhm.
specific are you referring to? What kind of things you want to know about?
Because I think it's more complicated, right?
Yeah.
It is about working with the family, working with the kid. If the kids have siblings, working with siblings. So I
Mm.
was wondering about that because, as the beginning I said, I care about kids. So I'm always wondering about that.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but thank you so much.
Yeah,
Mhm.
sure.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing so much on the empowering thing. I'm really, I wish everybody would have an oncologist like you. I know that you're kind of like slowing down on your practice and you're only in one area, geographically speaking, but excellent stuff that you shared with us. In terms of empowering, I have something for my talk in 2 weeks, but it has to do with asking questions, right? Right before the treatments to the oncologist. Oncologist can be, in a way, your employee. You're hiring this person to help you heal. So ask these questions. And I'm very not surprised anymore, but guess what? None of them, they don't have the courage to ask the questions. And I'm saying, hey, ask the questions. The more you know, the more you're gonna feel better about this person. Don't be in a black box. Open up. So thank you for sharing this stuff. I'm looking forward to see your recording or see this again in YouTube. I did learn a lot of stuff today. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Um, so medical doctors here in the United States are not allowed to prescribe natural things. What do you, what are your thoughts on that?
Define natural things.
Well, I mean, to give nutritional advice or anything like that,
That's not true.
that's yeah. I mean, if you could talk about that, I mean, that's what I've always heard.
So,
Um,
I mean, like I said, we don't get a lot of education in nutrition, and especially somebody like me who, although I know couldn't look a day over 30, I graduated medical school in 1996, right? And so, the whole nutritional, food pyramid, everything's all been changed again already. And so, I think it's important for medical oncologists to know when to speak and when to refer. And so, I like to have a good nutritionist, somebody that, works with cancer patients, but not just a nutritionist that tells you, okay, eat more protein, right? teaches you how to find the protein in your diet and how to modify certain things when you're not feeling well, what have you. So it's important to have, that's why I talk about connecting with your care team and making a list of all of the different subspecialty people that should be part of your care. Likewise for the integrative medicine. Now, I probably dabble more in functional medicine approach than most allopathic medical doctors. I have an interest in it and I've been studying it. I've always used a few supplements for my patients. I know the importance of supplementing vitamin D for your immune system and your well-being. I know the importance of making sure you get a good night's sleep and what supplements could help you potentially with that. I love using L-theanine, for example, for anxiety or to help you relax at bedtime. That's a natural component. You buy it on, you can buy it on pure encapsulations, or I actually have a full script account, and so I can provide supplements for my patients at this point. I also try to make sure that, people, if they're anemic, I always look into, or they have bad peripheral neuropathy. I always look at their vitamin B12 and B6 and folic acid levels. I look at their iron levels. If a patient, has bad peripheral neuropathy, I might even do something like an MTHFR gene to see if they have a mutation, because there are people that have this gene that doesn't allow you to process B12 and folic acid properly in your body, right? It's very common. I have it. And let's see what other things. But, when I was at Sloan, for example, we were not just prescribed cannabis. They didn't want us dabbling in the whole cannabis field, and I'm okay with that. I just, we had some referral sources that I would send to people to, and I think in a lot of cases, I feel like I have better medicine than cannabis serves, but cannabis serves its other purpose. So for certain pain management systems, I think it works really well. For people with refractory nausea, I think it works pretty well. But so there's that. What other things? But, for example, if you're getting adriamycin to fight your breast cancer and you're going and getting infusions of vitamin C, which is an antioxidant, you're potentially blocking the effect of your chemotherapy, right? And so it's important that your doctor knows everything that you're taking and what you're not taking. And, I think that as we see more and more functional medicine in the oncology space, I'm hoping to see some collaboration there with in terms of trying to support people at the core level. What do they call it? They call it it's the root cause, at the root cause of the symptom or the problem, as opposed to treating it up here with just a pill to bring down the blood pressure. So, but that's, you're not going to find many people like that in the academic centers. I'll tell you that. And I have to tell you that I think a lot of my colleagues, if they saw this lecture, would call heresy that I'm even talking about that. But anyway, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, and we appreciate that viewpoint. Absolutely. I have a question about what the medical system and you as an oncologist have been dealing with as far as time and time allotted per patient. And how should a patient distinguish themselves? Because, at most of the facilities that I've gone to, the doctor is allotted 15 minutes per patient, which is not a lot of time. And especially if you're dealing with a life-threatening, life-altering situation like cancer,
Mm-hmm.
what should a person do as a patient to, get the amount of time that they need?
Well, first of all, you can't make time, right? And so,
Right.
and then what happens is that then the doctor ends up running way behind, and then the next four patients are pissed off. What you can do, I think, is if you have, well, two things. One is your organization and your ability to present to the doctor up front the things that you want to cover. I need you to review this CAT scan with me again. I don't understand it. I need you to explain to me why I'm taking this medicine. I don't understand what it's for. I need you to help me with the fact that I get constipation and can't move my bowels for 3 days after each chemo. So that list and that planner that I'm talking about is key. I also found it very helpful. It depends on the model. My nurse used to go into the room first. And so I would always ask her to ask the patient, what questions do you have? And something simple that she already knows about how to teach would be like the constipation. And then the other ones, she would just let me know, hey, she wants to review her CAT scan again. She didn't really understand something. Okay. So then I know when I'm going into that room to make sure I have a copy of the CAT scan with me, as opposed to then I have to run out of the room, get somebody to print it for me, and then bring it back in to go over with it, what have you. So being prepared and letting the doctor know up front the things that you want to cover is really helpful. Second thing is, all right, so I have three things. Second thing is you can utilize your portal system, right? So most hospitals, doctors have a portal system. And so even if you don't want the answers in the portal, you can say, hey, here are my 4 questions that I definitely want to cover in my appointment tomorrow. Can you make sure the doctor sees these? So then the doctor has them already before she walks in. And I often find that you'll often get a little bit less defensiveness from the doctor if they know upfront what you're asking and why. Because if you walk in and you're animated and you're upset and you're pissed off and your CAT scan didn't look good, and you're like, you didn't even explain this to me. I don't understand this. What does this mean? Blah, 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 blah. The doctor goes, now, that's our job to absorb all of that. But if you're asking me how to best use your time, that's not it. So, I'm just saying like how to optimize your time with your physician is, not to put them on the defensive so that they have to defend themselves, right? And waste your time doing that. But to be clear about what your needs, desires, and questions are. And then the third thing is if you have a complicated issue, like you were in the hospital and things were not going well, and there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be covered, call the office and ask them to extend the duration of your appointment. Now you can't do that all the time because doctors, don't have that much time to do that. But if I know a patient had a complicated hospitalization and we're going to have to go through what happened and why and fix this problem or that problem, I might move them to right before lunch, right? And then give them a 40-minute appointment. So I just eat up my personal time. I don't usually get a chance to eat lunch. I eat it on the fly anyway. But you see what I'm saying? So that there's a buffer time so that I have extra time to spend with the patient. But if that happens on the fly and the patient's at 9:40 and I have 6 patients before and 7 patients after, it doesn't work out so well, right? So again, it's all about communication and stating what you need as the empowered patient.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Here's something that is one of my biggest pet peeves, and I would like to hear from your perspective.
Hmm.
In fact, I'm really excited to hear your perspective about this.
Uh-oh. Now I'm worried.
One of my biggest pet peeves, and I've heard everything under the sun about this, is the delivery of the diagnosis itself. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on how you approach giving a diagnosis to a cancer patient?
Well, first caveat is that I'm a medical oncologist, so oftentimes they have already seen a surgeon and know their diagnosis before they see me. What's often the case is that, for example, the patient had surgery and didn't have their post-op visit yet with the surgeon, and I have the pathology report, and I have to break it to them that the cancer actually is in the lymph nodes and it's stage 2 or 3 or whatever it is. So that is one scenario that I often they might already know that they have cancer when they see me, but they might not know the extent of it. And so that's something that I have to break to them. And I try to deliver that, try to put myself in the scenario. Well, first thing I always ask is, have you seen the pathology report? And I always ask, what is your understanding of where we are right now? Because it's always good to feel the temperature in the room and to know what the patient already knows or doesn't know. And that's very helpful in terms of how and what I deliver. Um, and sometimes my nurse, if she goes into the room first, might do that for me. and report back to me, for example. Like, oh, she hasn't even seen her path report. She has no idea or she hasn't seen her PET scan. She doesn't know it's spread to the bone. And then I try to present it sort of not matter of factly, but calmly, slowly, compassionately. I always write everything out. So if I'm going to tell you you have stage 2 breast cancer and it was in the lymph node, I'll write that out. I'll probably make a diagram and show what that is or where it was found. And then I usually will ask, do you understand? Tell me back again what you heard me say. Because a lot of times people don't hear you. And this is often a problem especially if the cancer is very advanced, because the emotion takes over and now they stop processing. And so all they hear is metastatic, I'm dying. And they don't hear anything else after that. And so it's really important to always check back with the patient and let them know, I'm really sorry I have this bad news to tell you, but I never like to give bad news or, news that the patient isn't expecting without already having a plan in place. So whenever my style is to present the problem and then present my recommendations to help fix that problem. If that makes any sense.
That's beautiful. I love that. Absolutely love that. I mean, I've heard so many, and I understand that doctors are human beings, and each doctor is different, and they deliver this life-altering message with their own personal style.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I love hearing doctors that are compassionate, because I think that's such an important aspect, because these patients are coming to you and their life is about to change in an instant. I mean, cancer is a life-altering event,
Mm-hmm.
and you're the one who's delivering that message. And so to have that compassion and to show that you care. I mean, I've heard people getting diagnoses by email over the phone and,
Yeah.
and things like that, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. So the any doctor that has the compassion, at least to care enough to try to deliver it in the most compassionate way, I think is so critical.
Agree.
Now, what about, and this is my final question, we have a hard stop at the bottom of the hour, so we really appreciate everything that you've shared with us.
Thank
What
you.
are your thoughts on giving the patient the news of that they're in remission or NED?
Hmm. I forget where this became a very big issue in social media not too long ago. Actually, I'm actually doing a medical malpractice case right now that's looking at that because the patient heard that the doctor told her she was free of cancer. And so when it came back, there was, I don't know, a lot of chaos and things transpired. But um I there's different levels of saying NED, no evidence of cancer. There's radiological ways. I could say, well, I don't see anything on the CAT scan. There's tumor markers, there's blood work ways. There are symptoms, right? So a lot of times with like a early stage breast cancer patient, we don't even rescan them when they're done with their treatment unless they have a symptom or there's a blood test that's abnormal. And patients don't always like that, but that's actually the NCCN guidelines is you don't rescan early stage patients. Um, I lost my train of thought. There are new ways now that are being utilized in some spaces where patients are getting ctDNA, circulating tumor DNA. Does anybody know what that is? Anybody not know what that is? Raise your hand. Okay. So there's 3 types of DNA in the body. There's the genetics, your hereditary DNA that you got from your mother and your father that make up you. There's the tumor DNA, which is when the cancer is removed, they can extract the DNA from that. And the DNA in a tumor is foreign. it was your cell, but then the DNA mutated and changed, and it can have abnormalities in it, and that's what led to it becoming a cancer. So there's tumor DNA. And then there's circulating tumor DNA, which are cells or particles of cells or just the DNA that are excreted or broken down when the cancer cell dies or breaks out into the bloodstream or what have you. And that DNA is representative of the tumor. And those tests are are finite in terms of being able to detect very, very low levels of circulating cancer cells in your bloodstream. And they are looking at that in monitoring patients for recurrence, in predicting response to treatment, to, even monitoring for new cancers, what have you. And so there's a bunch of tests that are out there now. How we work them into treatment and how they play a role in our paradigm of treatment, cure, what have you, hasn't really been established yet and is still, and unfortunately, it's kind of being managed individually per cancer type. So what might be true for breast cancer is not true for prostate cancer. And they're not even looking at it in prostate cancer most of the time because a PSA is such a good marker that they don't use this, they don't bother with the ctDNA. Anyway, so it's hard to answer that question at this point. Usually the traditional thing that we say is there's no evidence of cancer right now. Your risk of recurrence is this. We're doing X, Y, and Z to decrease that risk, and we're going to monitor you carefully.
Beautiful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shut off the recording right now.
Okay.
So thank you everyone for joining us here at the Cancer Conquering Community. Please join us next week.